Hello, hello, my beautiful friends. It's Izabela here in the studio with my great colleague, Helen Holden Slottje. Besides, she's an attorney. Don't be intimidated and not to ask questions. She is a phenomenal human being that also has tremendous experience in today's topic as we're embarking on the episode 4, Healing Invisible Wounds. We know that a lot of things change. We know that a lot of people are not sharing really what's happening in their personal world because of remote work, because of overload, because of infrastructure, or how the teams are really operating. When you have a lack of support, when you have a lack of trust, but even when you have all of that, it's very difficult to talk about something so personal like losses, right? So, Helen, first of all, how are you? Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. And what just a terrific idea to be talking to people about this. These are things that we don't talk about. People talk about how happy the holidays are and how wonderful everything is, and taking the time to create a space to talk about, well, what if things aren't so wonderful, or the holidays bring up memories of loss and the like, and making space and time for people to think and acknowledge that. I just, once again, you're at the cutting edge of uh, thinking and helping and pushing the way that we talk and think. So thank you so much, Isabella. Just delighted to be here with you.
Wonderful, and I'm so glad you are able to find hour of your time in an extremely busy schedule to join us in this leadership hour. And also, this series was transpired obviously beginning of November. That is 2 months of giving back. Maybe we can volunteer. Maybe we cannot do things we typically do because not only we're busy, because a lot of things are having a lot of restrictions and constraints. But how do we give back? This is our way of giving back by showing up and covering these last 2 months of the year where we have not only holidays, you're spot on, also a lot of pressure, right? And a lot of expectations and so many things happening, change in season and weather. And for a lot of people, also these changes that affect their performance, their well being. So, with that in mind, we've seen a lot in previous episodes, Helen. People are obviously being suicidal or trying to commit to suicide, and really talking about different professions as well, regardless how much friends or support system do you have. It's a lot of despair underneath of the surface, right? We're also seeing a lot of anxiety and stress. And now, not everybody is equipped to deal with that effectively. And they say stress and anxiety will never go away, just no matter how you deal with that. And then depression and many other aspects of it. And then we run into something that is very, very challenging, the losses. Losses that we had not only during the COVID, but losses that we had prior. And tomorrow we're celebrating a very important holiday here. So do you mind sharing a little bit from your perspective? How is that reflecting on your personal situation and professionally, and how do you see affected your family members, colleagues, as well as business people?
Well, this is a very my on this whole notion of the holidays being a challenging time. My sister, who's 8 years younger than I am, but her husband died 3 years ago. He dropped dead playing golf in July of 2018. And it's been a real struggle for my sister. His 50th birthday would have been last week. And Thanksgiving's coming up. My sister actually went to go see her mother-in-law, who is older and has diabetes, and who, because of the grief of losing her son and having this, was in a terrible diabetic situation. My sister had to spend the day in the emergency room with her. My sister, herself was dealing with her own personal challenges and trying to show up. And then I'm trying to support my sister who's trying to, and I think there's just a lot of, there's so much of a push on this, sort of what I think of as the wheel. Generally, my sister calls sort of her life kind of rolling the stone. And it's just this constant battle of pushing the stone, of rolling the stone, of keeping the stone moving so it's not crushing you. Like the fear if you stopped whatever you were doing, that you would, be annihilated or crushed, or, something bad would happen if you weren't pushing all the time. And that doesn't leave a lot of space for rest and contemplation and really figuring out how you want to show up, what's going on. So I think these really are, and I think everyone is, that COVID has really pushed everyone almost to the breaking point. And that how we respond in these moments, how we can show up and being empathetic and accepting, and sort of, and also depersonalizing other people's behavior and not taking things personally, which was sort of like, that was like after Craig died. Not take, like, there were just so many things, and my sister was like, this happened, that happened, and I'm like, it's not personal. She's like, how, it feels awfully personal to me. Like, how is this not personal? And but taking that step back and understanding everybody's living in their own reality with their own set of problems. You have no real insight. You see the outside, not the inside. And I think that this is just showing up with people, like, just this, I think there's been this sense of anxiety and grief. I think a lot of it driven just by seeing what we're doing to the planet, and then COVID and all of this just layers. And so I see it, and I think everything is sort of of a fractal nature. So, I see it in my family, I see it with clients, I see it in the business world, I see it when I turn on the TV. And again, it's why I just think these kinds of conversations that you're hosting, and creating the space where it's safe to even talk about not being perfect, not feeling driven to succeed and to produce and to be efficient and to be effective, and to be on that wheel, run to what end? And creating that space to just, like, for people to stop and think and to feel supported. So again, just excellent.
Thank you so much for sharing that personal story, and then making it so relevant, because loss happens often unpredictably, right, and unexpectedly. We're having here Leah saying hello to both of us. Thank you, Leah, for joining us from Costa Rica. Always great to see your smiling face and have you here with us. We're also having Sadiq saying good evening to all of us. He's joining us from Middle East, I believe Saudi Arabia, right, Sadiq? If you have any questions, feel free to send us a message. Or ask any questions. We'll look forward to your guys' comments. But what I really wanted to emphasize is that a lot of times people see grief as a pain, and they avoid it, and a lot of times they suppress it, just because the way we're trained, either from early on in our family unit, in school, as well as business. And I really see a lot of disconnect to being in touch with ourselves, right? What we really going on, as you mentioned, like, you have to move that wheel and you have to move that stone and rolling the stone, because you're not permitted to take a break, or it's expected for you to quickly recover or be back in the game, or just to get a grip or get shit done, or whatever might be the situation. And when we are not able to process this in healthy way, or able to feel it and grieve it, it's really, really hard, because we're suppressing this. But I want to really point out something that I've really heard, and ironically showed up this morning. As always, the right messages show up, and they say, here's a beautiful alternative. Grief is unexpressed love. How many of us had so much love left for people that we lost? Some with permanent loss through deaths, right? And some of them lost due to separation, divorces, or through changing jobs, the countries and circumstances, losing the homes, children, family members, whatever might be the scenario, right? And that grief really, it's sometimes also subconsciously there, that really want us to keep that person alive in our memory. And that is very interesting dance, right? When it's healthy and when it's not as healthy, and how should we deal with that? And we're also having here with us Tarja, that is joining us from Finland. And she's a psychologist, which is always great to hear her perspective. in the space of awareness and reflecting to contemplate. And self-care is absolutely so important. So thank you, Taria, for pointing that out. Specifically, Finland, for example, in Europe has a very different perspective. Um, how they treat not only their employees, how much time they're giving them off, how you don't have to explain reason if you need to take a time off. You don't have to worry about is it going to be paid leave or not as much. I mean, we have a very different infrastructures, right, and a very different systems. We're also having Glenn here, who is joining us. It's great to hear you and see you here, Glenn, with us. That it's also very personal and very relevant, right? And then the story that Helen shared, it is very personal, and we'll definitely go back to Helen now to share more. But I just wanted to point it out that we have to recognize, are we really grieving? And why we're grieving, what we're longing, and what to do. I always remember saying what to do with the magnitude of love that is pressed in my chest, and I just don't know or cannot express or tell. And then I learned some really great coping mechanisms, which I will share with you in a bit. But I want to hear from Helen. Helen, you were helping obviously your sister, right? And other friends and other family members. You're one of those people that is always there and having people's back. Not only as an attorney that I know from personal experience with phenomenal advice, but also that you are a thinker with great creative solutions. How did you go through magnitude of those changes, and then what did you do for yourself for yourself?
So, well, great questions. And I think that sort of first and foremost, for just for myself, I try to be compassionate with myself and not, I, on the one hand, am very driven and goal oriented and want, like, put a wheel in front of me. I'm going to get on it, start jumping, running, and then maybe I'll ask where we're headed. But to do a little bit less of that and to be compassionate and to not hold myself to some ridiculous standard. So I think just giving ourselves this chance to breathe and to truly just take a breath. When as far as kind of tactics or coping mechanisms or the like, right after Craig died, he died, as I mentioned, playing golf. My sister wanted to go to the golf course, to the hole where he died. And so we went there together, which was just fun. I'm going to start crying thinking about it. Like, it was like just this really, and we went to his office, we went to different places and got his stuff and things. And when I was at the golf course, I remember just like, I looked at the bunnies. There were little bunnies there and they were like near the tee box and they were playing. I was like, look at the bunnies, breathe, like just look at the bunnies and look at the sky, look at the flowers. Like, there is beauty here, even in this place where he died. And so trying to find the beauty, trying to find, and just even with my sister, feeling like I didn't have, there was nothing to fix. There was nothing for me to say that was going to make it better. All I could do was basically hold her, like physically, like sit behind her and like hold her and just like tell her like I didn't know how, but it would be like we were okay. Like, we were in that moment okay. Like, we weren't under attack. We, like, this terrible thing had happened and we just had to sort of give it space and feel it. And that it wasn't going to feel good. It wasn't going to be happy. It wasn't, but it was a true and honest emotion, and not sort of jumping in and smothering it or fixing it or saying it also, well, it was a blessing. Well, no, it wasn't a blessing. Like, it wasn't great that this happened. So like, oh, he's in a better, like, there's all these things people say, like, and that's when we got into the depersonalization, because people don't know what to say and they don't know how to show up. And they often think, well, and at her work, the idea, well, we'll give her privacy, we'll give her space, we won't talk to her. Or she'd see people in the supermarket and then walk away from her because they didn't know what to say. And like, it's not like death is contagious, but we kind of think it is, or we want to know, like, how did it happen? What had, like, and not out of concern for the person, but just sort of to check off, like, oh, okay, he wasn't a smoker, but was he a smoker? What, like, what were the risk factors and how can I avoid them? And so just trying to take and understand that other people's behavior really has very little to do with you. Like, they're acting out of their own patterns, their own life. Was somebody in my family who was like, well, an in-law who was like, well, in my family, like, we don't talk about this, we don't do that. And it turns out, like, 3 generations ago, like, something happened, and like, this is the way their family copes. And it seemed very heartless to my sister, like, what this person did and said. But that was like her family background of how you talked and what you said. So just trying to be compassionate to everyone and understand, everybody's has some level of difficulty in their life, whether it's showing up at that moment or not. And trying to really understand that most people are good natured and want to be helpful. They just don't have any idea what to do or say, because as a culture, we don't talk about it. So, and she has been very vocal. She started a web page where she posts various advice. But like this year, when she was talking to somebody about it, someone was like, how can I support you? What does support look like for you?
Wow.
And she was like, wow, like my friends are listening. Like, instead, like, one of the things is, like, don't tell somebody, like, if there's anything I can do, just let me know. Like, don't put the onus on the person who is suffering to tell you how, what you make it. One of her things is make an offer. And maybe, so do you want to have dinner? Maybe the person's going to say, no, I don't want to have dinner. Would you like me to bring dinner over? No, I don't even want to eat. Could I bring over, like, something to drink then? And like, push, like, to like find something that you can do, but don't leave it to the person to say, oh, you ever want to go out to dinner? Just give me a call. Like, the person who's grieving isn't going to think to, like, make this proactive effort to be inclusive and to think of the person, and that it's okay to talk about it. She loves to talk about her husband. And people are like, oh, should we not talk? It's like, she's like, I want to talk about all our adventures and everything we did. Like, he's not like, I had my life with him. Like, I still want to be able to talk about that. And I don't want other people to feel like it's morbid to talk about a great trip I went on, or a fun place, or, a funny story about him. And so making it very okay and acceptable, and drawing out those stories and sharing those stories with people, I think really helps to connect. And then at the same time, bringing people back to the present moment, where whatever is happening, I will also say to myself, like, I'm safe. Like, I am in this moment physically safe. And these are, like, I'm just feeling emotions. Like, none of this is going to kill me. Like, even my broken, bleeding, trashed up heart, like, I can feel that and it won't kill me. And I can let that go to replace, and then it will, that flowing of the energy will lead to it. This too will pass. Like, and I say that in the good times and the bad times. Like, and we live a full life. We don't live a life, like, we don't, until we're dead. Like, the story isn't over. The ultimate meaning, it has not been discerned. So leaving, making this space, just to be, and to not, not be so hard on ourselves.
Wow, what amazing words of wisdom. And I just want to say thank you for everyone that showed up. Zahra, it's so great to see you. Glenn, Taria, Sadiq, Liga, and everyone else. Feel free to ask the questions. We have also a lot of great expertise in this audience. But what you just shared, Helen, it's so amazing on many levels. Number one thing you mentioned, we don't really know, we don't talk about how to grieve. So you have natural cause of that, unpredictable, unexpected, from young men who lost his life playing golf. Beautiful, sports and doing things he loved, but yet, of course, aftermath of everything, because every sudden death and separation for loved ones, it's challenging and hard. But we also have so many ranges of that, right? That happen not only just during the COVID, but people also, because of distances, not able to see each other, and so much grievance, and even some of them that geographically could not be present during their loved ones to really have a proper burial, to have a proper goodbyes, as we call it culturally, closure. And then I hear so many different things that people say, that is overrated, that doesn't even matter. You can have your own literature enclosure, depending, of course, what type of person you are, what upbringing and beliefs you have. And I love that you brought it up and how important it is, because we have to understand who we're dealing with. And I love the question you impose. How can I help you? What support looks like to you right now based on what's going on with you? How can I be here to support you in grievance or support you to get this today through? Whatever might be scenario. Because a lot of times people also, when they lose someone, had usually other issues, specifically if it's something that they've been anticipating for a long period of time. We also have anxiety, we have a stressor, we have a depression. Sometimes we have some other types of issues. It's not just one thing, right? It's a shock. And you never know what foundation as the human being that individual has. And I love what you also pointed out, because all these things are internal, they're invisible. It's not like somebody broke their arm and now they're having cast and we know their hand hurts and it's healing and they're going to get better. We don't see those internal wounds because they are invisible. And those are the hardest one to heal. You know why? Right, Helen? Because you can mask them, you can pretend they're not there, you can use different substances to numb the pain or pretend it's not happening. You can do excessive types of behavior, as we see with wide range of addictions. And then we start looking, how is possible that our colleague that we know so well changing his behavior, right? Or she or he, or how we that we know that we've seen family member withdrawing and nobody can talk to them. We've seen a lot of those behavioral changes as a result, right? And I love what you said. You have to figure it out for yourself, for your own standards, not other people's standards. But the problem is also that we don't have societally here ways how we're trained to ask for help. And do you mind sharing a little bit about that? Because I love you mentioned your sister having website where she's helping others to go through grievance and loss. But I'm curious, how did you work with her to get to the point that she can be comfortable to seek and ask for help? Doesn't matter what type of help.
Well, that's a terrific question, and I think in my case, only recently, has she started to really even have the ability to create the space to really feel these emotions and to start to want to talk about, as she put it, what support looks like for her. And I think getting like after, so any sort of loss like this, any sort of shock to the system, that we're fundamentally predictive beings, where we predict what's going to happen, and often, even if that's not what's happening, our cognitive like processes are able to override enough of reality so we can pretend and think that what we think is happening, and we live in this kind of bubble, and then we get shocked, and something like just wakes us up from this entrancement with, sort of whatever we think is important, and it come to find out we're like, well, none of that's important. This is just kind of a funny story on that. This isn't directly answering a question, but my sister has this really, really fancy all clad copper baking pan that she bought, like really very, like really, really fancy. And Craig made brownies in it, and he cut them up with a knife and he scored the whole bottom of the pan. And she was like, you wrecked my beautiful pan. It has all these marks in it, like, like in this one moment was like upset about the pan. Now that Craig has died, she loves that pan. Those marks are Craig's marks. Like, that's like from a time that they were making brownies together. And this pan that she was upset was broken in a way. Now that very act of breakage And like his mark on that is makes that like you couldn't, if I bought her a replacement, the fanciest brownie pan, she would not want it. She wants the one that has Craig's marks in it. And but we have these shifts where we go for like, and that's just a small one, but the thing that was a bad thing is now a good thing. And so trying to get that sense that like things are in flux, and that everything, that there are other interpretations for whatever is happening. And trying to, and again, it's just like this, I think ultimately just being, less doing, more being, and trying to just show up and create. For me, what I try to do with everyone, like with clients, with people I'm, working with in my family, is be this resonant, calming, coherent, ultimately sort of energy pattern, as it were, and and have that coherence bring a literally like a physical felt sense to the person that I'm with, that creates a sense of safety, warmth, and that it's okay. And I think that, to me, that's like, that's what I'm here to do in general. And it's for whoever shows up. I believe things emerge and in synchronicity and less in sort of cause and effect. So that for whoever is showing up in my life, that my role, such as it is to try to be, to try to allow them the freedom to express as freely as they want to, with as few sort of impositions or directions from me of, well, you have to do this, you can't do that, I want to hear this, I don't want to hear that, this upsets me, that doesn't, don't do this, do that. Less of me directing and more of me just being and seeing what emerges, and being okay with whatever that is. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's crying, maybe it's laughing, maybe it's dancing, maybe it's singing, but letting sort of, but less of this like fixing and problem solving, and just more, we're all human, we're all here together, trying to just let that be okay. Like whatever, like it's just, it it's some part of this larger, huge, billion year, like big, huge pattern. We're looking at just this one little piece of it, and just not bringing any more discordance or resistance or fighting sort of what is.
Wow, that is so powerful. And I love that, and how applicable that is for other aspects in life, right? To me, that is not only holding the space, but that shows a level not only of maturity, but truly desire on human level to connect and meet people, that particular person, where they're at, and fully embrace them with no judgment, with no expectations to be anything than what they wanted to be or who they are in that moment. And sometimes that comes also as we label as ugly or as a bad or as an anger, as a frustration or as a rant or as a whatever might be situation. People storming out or coming in back and forth or whatever. But sometimes the whole process, and it's very interesting, everybody grieves in a different way. And they never know how they're going to grieve after certain things till things happen. I've seen people grieving not only about people that passed away, but relationships that they had. Dogs, their pets, for example, or whatever it might be, jobs or companies that they felt that did phenomenal work and put so much sweat and equity, and then they've been laid off. And ironically, so many people are being laid off right now, actually, that I know, that companies chose to, which is so shocking to me, just a few days or week prior Thanksgiving and before holidays, to let them go before end of the year, with no sense of that is happening, no preparation, and definitely now merging into how do I show up? I just lost the job. Do I tell right away my family? How should I work towards this Thanksgiving and then keep it some positive face? What should I do, Izabela, because my wife doesn't know and she was diagnosed with a cancer? Those are life scenarios and situations. And if we don't know, would we make a different decision? But would we treat people better even if we have to make those decisions? And the reason I'm putting this for and spinning off in many different directions, guys, because that is the life. Every single individual that show up to work also brings identity, what they and who they are at home. They bring that essence of themselves. Other breadwinners, other supporting family members with additional paycheck, whatever might be scenario, however label titles, or they're single moms, or whatever it might be. And I'm seeing so big plethora of not a lot, and exactly what Helen was sharing, not being there to just create space to ask right question, sometimes just to listen, sometimes just to be there and observe, because every day, specifically larger and larger companies are, something happens in the life of people. And as a result, it dictates not only their behavior, the level of their performance, their engagement, but also the output, what they're bringing to it. Some of us are trained so well indoctrinated. You shouldn't be crying. You should be acting as a leader. You should be always looking, people are watching. But if we take away vulnerability, what are we creating? We're creating a robotic, sterile, artificial environment. When pain is being suppressed with medication or different addictions, and where we don't connect, because we're spending so much time with people in work environments, don't we? Like, luckily you partner with your husband, and it's a beautiful thing because it's your playmate, it's your favorite person you want to be around with anyway. And what a privilege to work with someone who you also not only love, who is extremely wicked smart, and it's just a lot of fun to also engage throughout the day, specifically in times when we're remote, right? But how is this really helping us in the current environment? And I would love to hear some questions from audience. But Helen, back to you with this, because we're seeing also a lot of issues. I was always talking about this major obsolescence in the sense of that we have two abnormal positions here. Teenagers committed suicide, and in one way, barely, I can't understand that. I mean, I can't accept it, but to some extent, I can understand it, because of COVID and alienation and not having normal engagement with their peers. But also, not everybody's environment is healthy. Not everybody has a home. Not everybody is welcome in their home. Not everybody have the warm, clean bed to go to, or person or parent or family members that truly genuinely care. And then we're having this other extreme where we're having adults, specifically mostly men, actually, sadly, mid 50s to mid 60s, committing suicide and going that route, and then creating so much grief, when we're also not losing someone due to natural causes, when we're losing someone due to pain and suffering because they felt so alone. And that is where it hurts the most. So what are some of your thoughts and experiences, some things you've seen, and some recommendations?
So, yeah, it's, hold on just one sec.
No problem. Helen, it's a busy attorney and a lot of irons in the fire. And again, I'm extremely grateful to have her with us here today. But with what we were just sharing, I mean, it's just so important to really be genuinely honest and be heart-centered. You know, be heart-centered. Feel it, you know, how you're showing up when you even want to express the grievance towards someone, you know, or consult someone that is grieving, and being really trusted support there. I would recommend for everyone to learn, if you don't know, as Helen mentioned earlier, so many people don't know how to express their condolences. They don't know how to make themselves genuinely available. They don't know what a grieving person is going through. They don't know what is the best way to act that doesn't, and it's not coming from selfish reason. I had someone I remember was asking some things that I felt like were not appropriate, and being truly just genuine. And when you have people like that, you know, then you kind of like, yeah, you want to kind of close your world to everyone, right? So it's very, very difficult, but it doesn't have to be. With right tools, we can all be much better in all aspects of it, right, Helen?
So, well, yeah, and I think Tarja here has brought up the concept of loneliness. You were talking about, and the sense of separation, and I think that our fundamental worldview at this point in time, the worldview that we are acculturated to, that again, invisible. There are basically, again, in sort of my conception, there are visible forces, and we acknowledge and agree that visible forces exist. There are lots of invisible forces. Electricity is invisible, but also powers of our personality and other things that are going on and things that are invisible. And we have, in trying to perceive the physical, visible universe, we have engaged in a process of separation and segmentation and fragmentation, uh, in this contrast of it's this, it's not that, it's good, it's like, and in our ability of making these discernments of experiencing reality through contrast, we fail to understand, or we forget, and we're never taught the back. We're all on one painting, we're all on one canvas, and we are really the canvas, not the painting, to use one sort of analogy. But we identify with like our paint, like the paint color, versus the fact that everything and everyone is connected. And when we forget that, we feel, and we buy into the narratives and our culture of separation, of competition, of playing a game until the game ends and then there's a winner and a loser. That is dehumanizing. That is robotic. It is our even our desires are programmed. They're mimetic desires. They're desires we are taught to have. They are things we are taught to value. And when we step back out of sort of being in the picture and look at the picture as a whole, and are able to see that we are interbeing, we are interconnected, we are all truly one, that provides the ability to, it both eliminates this sense of like, I'm a lonely speck of dust floating through the planet, I'm going to live and die and that's it, and there was no point to any of it, and this is terrible, to really feeling this sense of interconnection and wonder. And that sense is what, that's the shift we need to make. And from the belief in separation, in from the belief in duality, from the belief of I am this, I am not that, and not thinking that those are just constructs, like those, there's no fundamental underlying truth or reality to our opinions about things. Like things just are. And if you think if everything is like one big pot or stew that like existed before all of this happened, whatever the background was, the big bang or yin yang, it's basically, if I like to think, it's like a fly swatter. It, when I do that, the energy that got smushed over here is compressed, the energy that is over here has been rarefied, it's moving fast, but it was all the same thing beforehand. And the air here isn't better or worse than the air there that I just moved. Like there was this motion, and we think like we're this, but we're not that. Well, it's all fundamentally one. So coming from that sense of interconnection, when you really believe that, when you can really experience that, then you don't want to hurt other people. And you believe, as I do, that everyone that I run into and I'm working with, or I'm helping, or I'm part of, like that is a reflection of me. I'm helping me in some way. This is the thing I find annoying in the other person. Well, that's really just something I find annoying about myself. So what is this telling me about the larger picture? But really trying to feel into, and that's why experiences of awe give us that sense of interconnection. But trying to getting off the wheel for a minute and feeling. When we feel, we can understand where it's the only place from which we can begin to understand this nature of interconnection and interbeing. And that, to me, like that's the solution. The solution isn't a pill. Like, I mean, you might need a pill, like given where you're at, but the real solutions are understanding what we really need, and how just at the matrix level, at the emergent, at the implicate order, like whatever you want to call where reality emerges from, it's all the same thing. And we're all part of that, which is amazingly, like, awesomely creative and powerful. And we forget that, like, we are here to experience all of this in its beauty and glory, in a process that's billions of years old. Like, we're here at this moment of unfolding, and to feel, and we're all here together. And there's meaning. We can find meaning in that makes this much more humane and conducive to growth than the belief that we need to chop everything up, cut it up, measure it, dissect it, sell it, buy it, throw it away. And so I think those kinds of, and that's that kind of shift to the just being with all of this, like, and looking at the freneticness as the very cause of the problem.
I love that, and Taria is also mentioning as well others how interconnectedness it is all about all of us right now, specifically with virtualization, with accessibility, with globalization, with opportunity to really get a pulse what's going on in the world in the split of the second, be able to connect with our colleagues and friends, family members, or people that are dear to our heart. But I love what you said, intentionally not hurting people, intentionally making choices and decisions, how we show up as a human being. And it's interesting because hurt people, right? And then seeing really interesting pattern that I have to say, break my heart when I see someone that has phenomenal potential, and I also thought highly about, I start exhibiting behavior that I feel like it's so, not to be in judging, not from judgment perspective, but like, why would somebody do that? And I did not expect that X, Y, and Z will do something like this, just sometimes. And then, like, I maybe did not realize where they're at, or maybe I didn't really understood the depth of issues or situations they're dealing, or things that they chose not to say, or things that maybe escalate, and even maybe with a good relationship that they still decide not to share with you, right? We have all these different patterns, but one thing I'm finding, these behavioral stuff that are puzzling. I'm seeing this with colleagues in working environments, with leaders in the different stages of their career. That doesn't mean it's exempting one over the other. So it's like very common across the board, and specifically with adults, which is behaviors of not responding, ghosting, gossiping, shattering somebody's goals and dreams, a lot of that toxicity that is around, and things that are just not on their level, right? And shouldn't be the forefront of their identity, or at least who we are specifically as a professionals, and then how we show up. And I love, Helen, also how you highlighted how it's important to be really self-aware of how do we show up, because it doesn't matter what others do, but it's reflection. What do we do? We always can say and do more, right? We also can reflect and deflect situation, and question it is it going to be meaningful to whom, right? Is it going to matter? And is it going to make, what kind of impact it's going to create? And being so responsible, like love what Scott just said, love yourself so you can love others. I cannot agree more, Scott. And I find a lot self-love that is missing. I know the women still struggle a lot with that, but I have to say, working with men struggle extremely a lot with that. And then also struggling to truly express their emotions or truly grieve in a healthy way. And more they are not doing that. It's harder. It's reflecting in everything around all of us. So I just want to say that I'm so glad you are sharing that, because a representative of male here on this live, because it's so important not only to focus on that self-love, but also show up in a kind, compassionate, loving way towards the other. So Helen, with everything that we talked about today, which is extremely, extremely important, and your share is absolutely brilliant, and thank you for showing up again day before Thanksgiving. Thank you. Midst of your closings and crazy stuff and layering, Helen is such a high demand attorney with everything she does, and she still shall, because this is our way, guys. This is why we decided for November and December to go with series of 8 or 9 episodes of healing invisible wounds, because we saw so much pain, so much grievance, so much issues, so much escalating situations that affect everything domestically and in business, but also with colleagues and friends. And we cannot ignore that any longer, right? Because people are going through so much. And with that in mind, what would you suggest and recommend being in the forefront, caring for somebody you love, dealing with the loss that doesn't have an expiration date, that we can't say get a grip and 3 years later you should be now totally like ready to do whatever. What would you recommend? What would you say actionably, something that they can start doing? The ones that are providing care and the ones that are truly grieving themselves. What would you recommend from both sides?
So, well, I think for people who are experiencing loss is to know that that none of us are alone, that we are that there are people, they may not know that those people may seem invisible at the time, but there are people who deeply care about you, like for everybody. Like there are people, and the world, like we're all here for some purpose, and to be here at this real point of transition, and transition and change and grief are all, very powerful, strong emotions. So trying to have this sense of feeling connected to other people, to I think just spending time in nature, walking in the woods, looking at like a river or a lake if you were near, spending time in nature, reconnecting to that is the most human and most sort of organic part of you, and really, and just cutting yourself a break. Like you're allowed to, like you don't have to be happy just because it's Thanksgiving. Like that's made up too. Like pretty much everything's made up. So trying to just sort of cut yourself a break, understand that that there are people, who care about you, and trying to get this sense of connection, even if you couldn't find a single person, like everyone just, you're like, yuck, I don't want any of those people. Then a pet, an animal, nature, a rock, like, and like feeling connected. Like I sing to trees, like the, like just sort of being out and enjoying that. And for people who are trying to support people who are, it is sort of this idea of understanding it's not your job to fix. There's nothing wrong with the person who's grieving. It's natural, it's normal. You could have extremes of emotions that would be abnormal, but feeling grief, feeling, you know, not thinking everything's like that, that's part of it. Everything's on a spectrum. So not feeling this need like you have to fix this person, or there's something wrong with this person. Like this person is having a human experience. It's a very difficult human experience right now. And showing up and asking them very specifically, not let me know if I can do anything for you. But again, like these really specific questions, like, can I make you dinner? Can I bring you something? Would you like to, go on a walk? Would you like to talk about, whoever and what they meant to you, and, and tell a funny story, but trying to connect again with them, just in a connection, not fixing, not solving, not you're the rescuer, they're the broken person. Like all of that, just I find to be not just reinforces the overall problem, but truly coming from and trying to, from your own self, have this sense of connection, of calmness, of yourself being okay, and just sharing that resonant presence with the person who isn't feeling that way, who's feeling discombobulated, and just sort of letting that presence really be what speaks.
That is so powerful and so actionable and so beautiful and simple, right? And sometimes we may not know at the moment what to do. And sometimes making the list of things that make you feel good, right? But you spot on from both sides how important it is just to, again, focus and be truly, genuinely interested in others' well-being. I remember I've always been asked, like, what do you care so much? I was like, I love people. It's not like I'm overbearing or pushing myself and inserting. And sometimes that's the dance too, to know like how much is too much of checking on someone, right? Different scenarios require, and how well do you know them? But I love what you pointed out. Don't use cliches just to check the box and show like, oh, I asked them, they said they didn't respond or they didn't care. That is not genuine way of engaging and trying to support someone, right? Because as we know, again, many people see grief as a pain, and pain can be very unbearable and can really be suffocating for a long time. And a lot of times we avoid that, suppress it, or erase the processes too way too quickly based on other people's standards, their expectations, and we spiral. And then we really don't do service to ourselves because we don't really recover, right? I see some people that did not recover from things for a long period of time. But we also see people that are grieving in a beautiful alternative with grief on unexpressed love. You know, like I had someone who lost mom, and he said to me, Izabela, I have so much grief for my mom, and some because I have so much unexpressed love. Because even though they were close, being a man, he didn't really share a lot of things with mom, and he regretted because like my mom could tell me so many advice because things I've been going through, she could really help me out. But right now, I feel like if I don't hold to this grief, this is for me to stay close to her. This is the way I'm doing it. So a lot of times we have a different ways of what that means to us, right? One thing I really want to just again recommend for everyone watching, listening, and then deal with people that are going through so much, um, asking questions, holding space, being there for them, and just being absolutely genuinely present. No phones, no social media, no multitasking. People can sense it, even if it's on the phone, let alone in person. It's so rude because what you send in the signal, everything else is more important. This is just one thing to check off of your list. And person that is already hurting, you're going to hurt them even more. So do it as fully present, fully genuinely interested in someone's well-being, and you'll be surprised how much they will share. And I love what Taria said here: bring compassion to specific actions, being specific and practical, and present it with us the no judgment attitude is so powerful. And I can't agree more. And you spot on with that. We're also hearing here from Scott, which I want to share what he is sharing with us about absolutely loving people. It's crucial. That is also on his vision board, which is fantastic. And then also got around on another Zoom. Cheers. Thank you so much for Scott for being here today and sharing. And it's so important to see people that are professionals and leaders in the industry, but they're in touch who they are and they're in touch what's going on with around them. So I really, really want to urge everyone, because tomorrow is Thanksgiving, an opportunity not only to express thank yous and gratitude to people in your inner circle, I mean, your family members or friends, but also really to your colleagues and people around the world. Create some really beautiful, paying forward messages with thoughtful things you can do, because it's always something we can do for others. Specifically for more fortunate or capable or able, and have conscious decision because we wanted to see others also being doing much better than we are doing, right? So with that in mind, any other closing remarks, Helen, before we close this broadcast for today?
So I'm very thankful and grateful for you, for all the work that you're doing, for your compassion and thoughtfulness, and creating again these spaces where we can talk about what's important, and really have this sense of even being here today talking with you about this, of this connection, and feeling like what we're doing matters, and that we're contributing to bringing forth a more humane world by our very being. So just thank you so much, and for everyone who is here and who has joined us, thank you for listening and participating. Have a great holiday, and just be kind, and try to look for the bunnies.
I love that. Or hug the trees and do some beautiful things with people you love, or just be in the nature and then hug the nature and embrace the nature and be on sun and whatever that is. Yes. So thank you, Scott, Taria, Liga, Ahmed, and all of you wonderful, beautiful colleagues and friends that you showed up. We really appreciate your comments, participation. Helen, I know you have to run and have another call and meetings. I just want to say you always show up. You're amazing, amazing human being. And I'm so deeply grateful for friendship, for opportunity to work with you. And I just want to wish your sister, your family, your colleagues phenomenal Thanksgiving. Thank
So,
you.
yes, you too. And thanks to everyone.